President. The floor is yours. Why don't we ascertain the status of the equipment? Is the system working?
Yeah.
It is working now. Everything is okay. Is this head still working?
You're on then? 1, 2? Yeah. Can you hear too?
Yes, but in English.
Okay.
That's how it's supposed to work.
Canal, ¿cuál es?
No, pero habla inglés.
Sí, por eso pregunto.
Both channels are working.
Okay. Number 2 is the number 2 is Spanish.
Before the President begins or continues in the seminar setting, let me ask Dr. Phyllis Ferguson just to quickly report on the succeeding seminars that will be held in the Michaelmas term, so that those of you who are interested are aware of them. Phyllis.
These papers will be available at the front, but I want you to know that on Thursday, the 24th of October, in the old library at University Church, Roger...
You need a microphone.
No,
To be able to the translation. Make sure that sorry.
On the 24th of October, Professor Roger Hood and Ramsey Clark, the former U.S. Attorney General, will speak on human rights and capital punishment at the old library at University Church. I'm not going to give the venues, but I will give the dates for the rest of the term. U.S. Senator Russell Feingold will speak on anti-terrorist legislation and human rights in the United States after the 11th of September, on Tuesday, the 29th of October. On Thursday, the 7th of November, Dr. Tajuddin Abdul-Rahim, who is the leader and convener of the Pan-African Congress Secretariat in Kampala, will talk about the newly formed African Union and human rights challenges facing Africa. On Thursday, the 14th of November, Katerina Cole, who is at Queen's College, who was our first International Human Rights Seminar intern, will discuss her experiences at Defensor del Pueblo in Quito, Ecuador, and we will also have a general discussion about internship possibilities in the future before the Alternative Jobs Fair. On Thursday, the 21st of November, Matthew Kukar, who's at St. Anthony's College and who is the chairman of the Nigerian Commission on Human Rights, will talk about the long struggle for human rights in Nigeria. On Wednesday, the 27th of November, Joaquin Villalobos, also of St. Anthony's College, will talk about human rights in El Salvador. And our last meeting on Thursday, the 5th of December, Tariq Ali will discuss fundamentalism, human rights, and the media. We invite all of you to come, and we want you to know that although we began very slowly 3 years ago, this is the first time that we've had a full 8 meetings in the term, and we're looking to go from strength to strength. And we particularly welcome President Chavez to start our seminar series this term. Thank you.
Since Norway beckons and we have some constrictions with respect to that time schedule of the President, let's just move ahead and ask you to begin, Senor Presidente.
Bueno, muchas gracias.
Thanks very much to you all again for inviting me. Now there's a question. Forgive me. Who of those who are here were in the previous talk that we just had? How many of you? Most of you. Most of you. That's why I believe that a very brief introduction just to thank Dr. Fisher at Trinity College for his invitation, his kindness, and to say that we have brought the image of Bolivar, a full-size image, a great liberator and revolutionary, and there he is, Bolivar, for you. And we have also brought some works, some books, I think, the books of the collected works of Bolivar, and some historical and legal documents for research. History is important. Without history, it is hard to understand what is going on right now in the world. And it is hard to find the keys to continue into the future. It is history that is the teacher, and who some people have said it's not worth looking at history, that one could not go forward looking in the rearview mirror. No, yes, like the God, you must look both ways. If at any moment in history, in the history of the world, we need to have this Hanic vision. The God, this is the God that was looking with one face forward and one face back. I think I'm mistranslating it. It is now that we need to look as this God looks, because we are now faced with an avalanche of confusions, and young people, those of you who are the young people, you have an enormous challenge right now. When we were as young as you, possibly the complexity of the world was not so great, but now there is so much information, so much disinformation, it is harder to decipher what the truth is. Life was so much easier when I was 20 than now for you who are 20. It is complex. It has become so complex, the world, life, to understand it, to decipher it, to search for truth, which is why I insist on what Dr. Ferguson was saying and Professor Gallagher, that only through the free debate of ideas will we ever approach truth, and that is why we are here. Right. A small detail, I want to tell you that with me, I did not announce this in the larger room, I am with the Minister of Education of Venezuela, Dr. Navarro. I am with the Venezuelan Foreign Affairs Secretary, Ambassador Chatterton, who was here as an ambassador for many years. I am with our present ambassador, Dr. Hardy, and his wife. I am with different representatives of the Venezuelan National Assembly. I think we have a Tarek with us. Where is he? Here's Tarek Williams, who is also deputy representative Calixto Ortega, a human rights fighter who is now in the International Commission of the House of Representatives, the Asamblea, and also the Hydrocarbon Commission, the Oil Commission. We also have the Minister of Energy and Mines. If you want to know anything about oil, and the journalists are here, here is our oil minister, Rafael Ramirez. Here is the general and historian, Jarcayo, who's one of my teachers, my masters, my consultants, the president of the International Institute of the Maiquetía Airport is here, Maria Lourdes Burbaneja is here, Maria Gabriela Burbaneja. My daughter is with us too, my eldest daughter, who studies international relations in Rosa, Virginia. Our ambassador in Paris is with us too. I did not. Jesus Chongue. Jesus and his wife and their family. So the Chongue family are with us. Admiral Fontan and his wife are with us. He is our military and naval attaché. So, a group of friends who are with us. Now, I'm not going to repeat what I said before, merely to add a remark and then open into the lovely dynamic of questions and of a dialogue. What in Venezuela happened, well, something first. From what happened there, when our meeting, which was so nice, ended,
y lo que estaba ocurriendo en la calle.
and what was happening in the street, it's worth seeing. I look at it,
Y analizarlo.
and I think about it. Why does it happen?
Alguien tocando con una,
Somebody
dándole a una, no sé qué era, una
was
cosa
banging,
metálica.
there was some metal banging,
Haciendo
right?
bulla.
Just some noise,
Pero qué
some
bueno
racket.
hubiese sido
But how nice it would have
que esa
been
persona se
if
hubiese
those
parado a hacer una
person had just stood up and asked a question,
¿verdad?
right?
Algo pasó también en
Something
Madrid.
happened too in Madrid.
Hace, ¿cuánto fue?
How long ago was that?
6 meses.
6
después
months.
del golpe.
After the attempted
Después del
coup
golpe, en mayo.
in May.
Estuvimos en Madrid en la,
We were in Madrid at the Universidad Complutense,
la Academia Diplomática.
at the Diplomatic Academy.
Muchos jóvenes ahí.
There were lots of young people there,
Y luego se salen, se
and
paran después,
3 stood up
también a hacer ruido, ¿no?
also just to make a
Con
racket,
una pancarta,
and also they had a banner,
con unas consignas
a
además
poster
que
with
dejan
but the
mucho que
phrases
desear,
they were using were
hasta obscenidades.
deficient and even obscene.
Y uno les ve a veces la cara,
And one looks at their faces, some of them, and they reflect hatred,
odio.
just hatred.
Ahorita le vi la cara a
I
una
just
muchacha
saw
y
a
tú
girl,
le ves odio.
and you could see her hatred.
¿A qué se debe eso?
Why? What's it about?
Casi siempre,
Nearly always,
casi siempre, son
it's
sectores,
people or
son,
sectors.
algunos son venezolanos,
Some are Venezuelan,
otros son,
some are not,
que pertenecen
who belong
a esa clase alta.
to that high class, that upper class of Venezuela.
Hay esa-
Nearly always, there are exceptions.
Una clase alta
An upper class
que, como bien lo dijo
that,
una
as
venezolana,
a Venezuelan lady properly said, a researcher, I think she is a sociologist,
1 o 2 años atrás,
said 1 or 2 years back,
una clase alta
an upper
que
class
pensó,
that believed,
así con esta expresión,
and with this expression I repeat it,
pensó que
believed
se podía vivir en
that
el cielo
one could live in heaven
rodeado del infierno.
surrounded by hell,
Y eso es imposible.
and that cannot be.
Hasta que han despertado y
Until
no han
now,
logrado entender.
they've woken up, and until they wake up, but they haven't understood. They have not managed to understand what is
Y
happening.
por otra parte,
And on the other hand,
una campaña mediática
a media campaign
que toca a veces los
that
extremos de la
touches
degeneración
the extremes of degeneration sometimes has contributed to inject into them hatred, a kind of fascism. That is fundamentalism, no doubt
se
about
habla
it.
del fundamentalismo
Sometimes we speak of Islamic fundamentalism as if all
islámica fuera
Islamic people were fundamentalists, which they are not. How nice. The Arab peoples, how lovely, how varied, how rich. I know something of the Arabic world, of the Arab world. And some people have the idea that all Arab people, because they have a turban on, they are mad or they are fundamentalists, because that has been the campaign that has been sold. But that's fundamentalism that you should not even want to discuss, that you will not stand and ask a question and give out an idea to compare them, to contrast them, but you just hit a metal pan with violence because you're discharging violence. Since I have no words, then I am violent. Or I stand at the door and shout slogans, some obscene, full of violence.
porque no hay razón,
Because there is no
hay capacidad
reason,
para
there is
razonar
no capacity to
en
reason
la mayoría. Algunos
in
sí lo
most. Some do.
Algunos sí lo hacen, y
Some
entonces
do, and then you
ustedes que
and
estudian
you who
leyes,
study laws and are jurists,
hace poco descubrimos unos
recently
documentos de la
we
OLP
discovered some documents of the coup d'etat
donde se desarrolla
group
una tesis digna de estudio,
where they have a thesis which is
una
worth
escuela de
studying,
juristas.
and is of a school of
Por
jurists,
ejemplo, donde se dice
where they say, for example, that
con todo lo que yo explicaba de
it's
cómo
Janus,
esta
the
Constitución
phrase God was Janus. When I explained how this constitution was born, bathed in legitimacy, according to the legal ideas of the golpistas, of the guys doing the coup d'etat, of some of their jurists, they said this constitution is not in the constitution.
señalan que no,
But they
están las
then
dos.
point out, no, that both are there, that both are in force, both
Para luego decir
constitutions,
que
and then
la que
they
está
say
vigente,
that the
¿verdad?
one that is really in force is the one of 1811. All of these wild ideas in order to confuse
Entonces,
people.
quería hacer ese
I
comentario.
wanted to remark on this because it does reflect, to a great extent, what is going on in Venezuela. A group of the population, a sector from the upper class and from the upper middle class that do not have any proposals themselves. They do not have a coherent discourse. They do not want a dialogue. So they opt for coup d'etat and for fascism and for trying to look for a military group, no matter what intentions underlies it all, just to get Chavez out. The obsession they have is to get rid of Chavez, but the fact is that at bottom they have been pushed to this opposition, often irrational opposition, by privileged groups who well know what they're doing, who want to give the light to this constitution, as they tried to do in the coup. They eliminated the constitution right away. In Venezuela was a couple of days without the constitution. They derogated this constitution. There was no constitution. There was no law. They eliminated the Asamblea Nacional, the Supreme Court. They began to arrest governors and representatives. Tarek was pulled out of his house by force and thrown into jail. He was struck. Fascism. The embassy of Cuba was surrounded by a fascist horde that destroyed vehicles, cut off their electricity and water supply to an embassy. To an embassy. And well, what? They wanted to get in there. Something truly fascist. That has been generated in particular by the confusion of media campaigns. Right. That remark. Now I am at your service to answer the questions that you wish to ask.
Señor Presidente, mi nombre es Jimena, soy una compatriota suya latinoamericana de Ecuador. Soy... ¿En rojo, en verde? En rojo.
Pero aquí está otro. Si no, aquí está uno primero.
En verde.
Si no está uno aquí.
Señor Presidente, le decía que soy una compatriota suya latinoamericana. Yo soy ecuatoriana y estoy haciendo un PhD aquí en la Universidad de Oxford.
I'm doing a PhD at the University of Oxford. I'm from Ecuador. And I want to tell you something. My country also has a very progressive constitution, respectful of the environment and human rights, etc. And we've had that since 1992. It's been amended, I think, in the year 2002, very recently. But the problem, and this is something that I expect from your answer about it, the implementation of the Constitution, that is a problem. How are we going to implement enforce human rights if we lack the resources? Sometimes we don't have the intention. I'm speaking about my own government. How are you going to implement? How are you going to enforce Articles 19 to 134, I think, that your Constitution has? Which resources do you have at your disposal? How are you going to do it? And I really wish you, success, because these are postulates, these are ideas and principles, based on respect for the law, for human rights. And you are a hope for the whole country, for the whole continent of Latin America and the world. I really hope that you succeed.
I'm delighted to hear from you, Jimena, such ideas, and know that there is a Bolivariano compatriot, because Ecuador was a place Bolivar loved so much, loved so well, that his greatest love was an Ecuadorian lady, Doña Manuela Sáenz. He himself called her the liberator of the liberator, the libertadora del libertador. Manuela. So I do thank you for your good wishes, and we have a lot of faith that we're going to go forward and that Ecuador is going to go forward too. And the people of Latin America has begun to change. The Venezuelan change is not unique, and it can never be unique. It's a continent that is changing. It is a single people. It is a single nation. Your people is the same people that I have. I did not feel a foreigner when I was in Guayaquil to a president's meeting recently on July 26th, the day when Bolívar and San Martín met and embraced in Guayaquil. I did not feel in a foreign land. We don't, and I don't feel foreign in Bogotá or Lima or La Paz, nowhere, or Buenos Aires or Ciudad de Mexico. It is a single nation. Latin Americans, we are a civilization. Bolívar said in the letter from Jamaica, we are not, neither European are we, neither African, nor are we Asians nor North Americans. We are Latin Americans. We are a mixture of all that. Recently, a Cuban man was telling me, he said, a perfect mixture. He said, we are the perfect mixture. At least we are perfect for dreaming and for struggling like Don Quixotes or like fools sometimes. Bolívar one day said, the greatest fools of the history, Jesus Christ, Don Quixote, and me. Now look, what do we do to have this constitution become a reality, to be complied with? Well, we are in process. We have begun the process of having this constitution complied with, and that's why we're doing these things. That's why we have elicited the reaction of an oligarchy, of an elite that does not want this to be applied. We are hell-bent on having it applied, because you're right when you say, or haven't been. There are magnificent constitutions. Our previous constitution, too, was not that bad. They all do encompass just about what's best of political science, juridical science, and virtually all of them have the best of intentions, recognize human rights. It's very rare to find a constitution that does not enshrine human rights. You won't find it. Well, of course, some are better than others. Ours is a very advanced one, a very well-wrought one, a very modern one for the 21st century. Now, how do we make it become real? That's where you need supreme political will. If you do not have political will, and besides will, capacity, because you can have lots of will, but if you do not have sufficient power, if you have not generated the social forces, organized social forces and organized political forces capable and sufficient for taking the project forward, it will remain half-baked. It will be just words and words. Now, in Venezuela, there is political will. We have the political will at the highest level to take this constitution forward. It is a commitment, a vital and existential commitment. We have social forces that have been gradually organizing, and especially after the coup, they have grown these Bolivariano circles. Círculos Bolivarianos, they're multiplying everywhere. Recently, after the coup d'etat, there's a sector that used to be very divided, or was recently very divided, the student sector. It was divided, it was neutralized, because the students historically have been the vanguard of the struggles of peoples in Venezuela. They divided the movement, they fragmented it, and now, after over 2 decades with a lack of organization for students, there is just now 3 months ago, the Federación Bolivariana de Estudiantes, the Bolivarian Federation of Students. And look, recently I said, well, I'm going to test these kids. They came to the palace and they said, okay, Chavez, here we are, count on the students. I said, okay, I'm going to test you guys. Let's have an assembly. When? I said, let's have an assembly in a week. They said, you're crazy. I said, no, let's do it in a week. Let's see what you do. Money, you have to find it. Well, they surprised me with an assembly in Caracas in the Poliedro, in the stadium. How many people? There was about 20,000 students and other young people who are not students. But okay, they are organizing students and non-students. It does not matter, because there's lots of students, there's lots of young kids who are dropouts and they are poor. Also peasants. Now the peasants have a federation. Ezequiel Zamora is the name of this federation. He is the leader, and next to Bolívar, or after Bolívar, is one of the ideological leaders. He is a peasant leader, something like Zapata, like Emiliano Zapata, same profile, or something like that Uruguayan, Artigas. People who struggle for the peasant, for the landless, for the land. So there is also a force of Bolivariano workers that right now, last night I spoke to some of them, are working hard to defeat this general strike that the oligarchy has called, and they will defeat it because they're workers who really do work. There is something that has been born now, and it's impressive, you know? Bolivariano women. Oh, wow. The women, organized women. Look, you cannot imagine what women are capable of when they're organized. If your woman asks you to throw yourself out the window, then start moving into the lower floor, to the ground floor. This seems to be an English saying. I've heard this a long time ago. And look, it's happening there. Women, 100,000 women, they're organized. You know what? It is a force. Recently I went. I said, okay, let's test out the women. About a week ago, I said, let's have an assembly. Let's set up an assembly of women. In less than a week, they did get women from the entire country. They came to a very large theater in Caracas, the largest theater, the Teresa Carreño. And we had 3,000 women there from the entire country. These were organized groups. And with passion, with force that is unstoppable. My God, nobody can stop that. There is no force that can stop a people when they are getting organized, when they have a project, when they have a faith, a will, and a passion and love. Okay, retired military man. Recently, we took the oath of the Front for Retired Military People. That's becoming organized. Young people, indigenous people, that's the Indians, Fuerza Indígena Bolivariana. And this all is under the flag of Bolívar. So there are social organized forces in Venezuela aware of what they're doing. It's not just a mass, an inchoate mass, as the oligarchy would have us believe. That's what the newspapers say. That's what TV says. They say they're hordes. They say they're lumpen. They demean them this way. Recently we had 3 days, and we organized all of these groups together in just 3 days, and it was a great test. With just 3 days, I said, come in 3 days, and they came from all Venezuela to give a response to this ultimatum I was given. There's about 2 million people. There was just no people. Caracas was chock full of people. So that is a response, a very firm, a very striking response, an organized people, a people that has leaders, that believes in leadership, people who are disposed and who are organized. Well, that is vital in order to promote this. If that people, if that mass did not have this degree of organization, and there is still very much to do, but we are growing week by week, step by step. If I was not here, sitting here, if what happened in Venezuela was nearly a miracle, but now I have a president friend in Johannesburg, someplace, and we said, hello, hi, this was after the coup, and she told me a very lovely thing. She said, President, you are a walking miracle. I said, no, I am not a miracle. The miracle is there in my people, because in Venezuela something happened that looks like a miracle. I didn't want to believe it. When they brought me in a helicopter when I was rescued from that island, not even 48 hours had passed and I had been held on an island. And when I asked, where are we going? And the people who came in, I was alone. I didn't know. I was incommunicated. They said, where are you taking me now? I said. They said, what do you mean, where are we taking you? To the palace. You're the president. I said, to the palace? To the palace. I said I don't want to go to the palace. I don't want to talk to... I thought they had sent for me to negotiate. I said, I'm not going to talk to that coup d'etat guy, that golpista. I said, no, he's detained. You are the president. And we were in the air crossing over the Caribbean. It was dawn, and I was saying, what is this? What is this? A miracle. Now that miracle is called a people. The people were capable with no arms, with nothing. Look, there are old people who are out marching 20 kilometers to get to the place where people were concentrating. Nobody called them. The media were not transmitting anything. The media were silent. There are children, there are old, young people, there are people on bikes, on motorcycles, there are peasants who stopped roads, blocked roads with tractors. They surrounded the garrisons. Now look, if those forces did not exist, this would have no life. An armed force, too. high degree of awareness, especially in the middle and lower ranks, of armed forces that are there. Some big fat general comes in, like in Chile, and tells the military, look, you grab hold of this and you just kill everybody. And me, the captains, the commanders, to kill who? To execute who? There's a constitution. Now, also, economically, we have enormous problems, but Venezuela, notwithstanding, does have the advantage of having resources, despite the poverty, despite the debt, despite the dramatic situation. We have got oil. This is a resource. We have managed to struggle for it. I had to go to Baghdad. I visited all the OPEC countries in order to have an agreement and have a price for oil, and we have managed to hold the price up, and with that we've managed to pay our debts. We've managed to pay our debt to the old people, to pensioners who died practically waiting to have their pension paid. We are paying an accumulated debt of 25 years. I'm not talking of the foreign public debt. I'm talking of the internal debt, of the social debt. Thousands of workers who left after 30 years and were paid nothing. Now we are trying to pay them little by little, and even to pay them with assets of the state, with land, because we do not have the cash, with buildings, with companies, with micro companies. We have created a bank for the people in order to give microcredit. It's 3 years old. We have created the Bank of Women. There's a year now for giving credit to poor women. This has generated lots of employment, particularly self-employment, micro family businesses. We have the law of land. This is also important. Lands, the laws. The laws, said Montesquieu, are the instrument for articulating the great project with the nature of things. The law of land, that's the agrarian reform, to give land to the peasants, but that affects the great oligarchy who are landowners. The fishery laws, this also favors small and medium fishers, but that also affects the great trawling interests. Microfinances for microcredits for savings banks. The oil law to guarantee that oil should be Venezolano and never be privatized again, because that was the plan, to privatize oil. So on and on. Fortunately, Venezuela has got resources, great difficulties, but little by little we will apply this constitution. We have some results that are very encouraging, particularly in social matters. We have got new institutions. A problem we have now, a serious one, is the legal system, which has not been restructured without a proper system of courts that is impartial and healthy and applies justice. It's very hard. That is the backbone of the state. Look at what happened with the golpistas who were on trial. The Supreme Court, because they bought some of the magistrates and others, they blackmailed them, they managed a majority, a relative majority is called, a circumstantial majority of 11 votes against 9. So they declared something that is a legal insanity, which should be looked at too. How could the Venezuelan Supreme Court have decided with so much proof, including the fact that I had been put in prison by golpistas, prove that there was no coup d'etat in Venezuela? How could they decide that? And they said I was not preso, I was custodiado, I was in custody and not and not arrested. So this should be, this commission should investigate that and tell it to the world. This was a Supreme Court where 11 people circumstantially said that this was so against 9. 2 people actually recused themselves because they had already emitted opinions in this case and could not be in the final vote. But anyway, with new institutions, with a political will, with sufficient organization, with political and social forces willing to bring the project forward, the Asamblea Nacional, that's the legislative, is vital, because the Asamblea is where the laws are made. There, fortunately, we have a majority, though a simple majority. We have got 2 representatives here. They are revolutionaries. They are struggling for the laws to be laws that really implement the Constitution and take things to reality. I hope the continent will follow this path, and I'm certain it will. This was a bit long.
Good evening, Mr. President. I have quite a lengthy question, I'm afraid, and it has a bit of a background. My father's family are from Ghana, And Ghana is not too dissimilar from Venezuela in terms of the resources that we have, the spirit of the people, and the conditions that, and the history that Ghanaian people have had to face and live under every day. And in July, I visited Ghana, having not visited it for some 4 years. And I was disappointed and upset with how much the country had regressed since the last time I had visited. We have a democracy. Since for the past 8 years we've had a democracy, and recently the IMF have stated that we are a star pupil in Africa, and yet people are suffering more so than I can ever remember. The gap between rich and poor is increasing, and the elite are becoming more and more enclosed in their own little sort of societies, and the poor are left to wallow in the mire. So anyway, I'm a law student. I'm reading a master's in law at Exeter University, and I was posed with this problem, this issue as to why developing countries are still so massively underdeveloped and still languishing in poverty. I'm not a sociologist, so I had to look at a way that I could reconcile my legal discipline with what I could see going on around me. So I posed myself a difficult question for my dissertation, and it is, should developing countries join the WTO, and is this, i.e. the World Trade Organization, and is this the solution for the underdevelopment and poverty in the developing world? I have an answer, which I have to submit in 6 days. My heart tells me no, the WTO isn't the way forward. But the rationale, the legal findings, the path that I have taken to try and seek out my answer, the logic has told me yes. So what I'm asking you, Mr. President, is to assist me with my conclusion and give me your view. Thank you.
Help him with his examination.
¿Cómo es tu nombre?
What's your name?
What's your name?
Jonathan.
Jonathan. Yes. De Ghana.
From Ghana.
Ghana and Lebanon. Guyana.
From Guyana. No, Ghana.
The Golden Coast.
In Africa.
The Golden Coast.
Gracias, Jonathan.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Mira,
Look,
yo creo firmemente
I
en lo que te dice
firmly
tu corazón.
believe on what your heart tells you. No,
Ese no es el camino.
that is not the way. That is not
Estoy
the path.
convencido de que no
I
es
am
el camino.
firmly persuaded that is not the way.
Claro, Venezuela está allí.
Of course, Venezuela is there
Venezuela está allí porque ya estaba.
because it was there
Llegamos
before
nosotros.
when we came in.
Ahora China se ha incorporado a la
Now,
OMC.
China's
Ojalá que
joined
la incorporación de
WTO.
China
I hope that the China's
otro modelo
accession, they have a different
económico.
economic
Es
model, they have a very important weight, and I hope, I wish
Los cambios que estoy
that
seguro se
the
avecinan
changes that I'm sure will take place in other countries in Latin America, all over the world,
vayan.
I hope
Estoy
that
seguro
these
que van a ir
changes
impactando la OMC.
will have an impact on WTO.
Nosotros hemos estado dando batallas y discusiones.
We've
pero
been arguing
grandísimas.
our points
Por ejemplo, en la OMC
at
yo
the
estuve hace
WTO. I was there.
estuvimos allá
When was it that we were there?
hace un año.
I think it was a year ago. We were at the WTO in October. We met there with WTO.
Fui a plantearlo.
And I was
Nosotros no
there
estamos de
to
acuerdo.
say that we do not agree.
Porque es suicida para nosotros.
It is
los países
suicidal for us,
subdesarrollados.
for developing countries in the third world and the fourth world, because there is a fourth and the fifth world now.
¿Cómo nos van a plantear a nosotros en la
How
OMC
can they tell us at the WTO that we have to renounce,
a toda
that we
posibilidad
have
de
to give up
desarrollar
any possibility
nuestros
of
proyectos?
developing our national projects?
Sería el suicidio.
There would be suicide of millions of people.
¿Cómo nos van a pedir
How can they ask
que nosotros
us
renunciemos a la
to
transferencia
give
de
up the
tecnología?
transfer of technology?
Eso es horrible.
That is a horrible thing.
Es decir, entonces estaríamos condenados para
We
siempre
would be then
a hacer lo que hemos sido,
condemned
y esa es una de las
forever
causas
to be what we
de
have
nuestro
always
subdesarrollo.
been, and that is one of the
El
reasons for our
colonialismo y el
underdevelopment.
neocolonialismo.
Colonialism and neocolonialism.
No vayan a sentirse ustedes
my European brothers, don't be offended. There's, you know, this is the historical truth. Sometimes you say, I remember having said that at a meeting, and someone, and I could see that he was being upset by my words, but I was talking about 500 years ago, and I said, do not be upset. I'm talking about what happened 500 years ago, but it is the truth. Us, for example, there was the October the 12th not long ago, and that was a day that Venezuela, Admiral Christopher Columbus arrived to a small village in Venezuela, to the island of Macuro, on the eastern side of the country. And the admiral was wrong. He thought he reached the India, and that's why we call Indians. But Indians are people from India. We're not Indians, we're Americans. They even took our name away from us. Americans are people from North America, but I am as American. I speak Rose. Or, any. North America. Jacques Chrétien. Jacques Chrétien, the first Prime Minister of Canada. People talk about the Americans. The whole world talk about the Americans, but what they mean is the United States. That's not true.